All right. All right. Okay.
Hmm.
Okay. So here it is.
This is an interesting one.
Getting tired of work from home. Weekends feel like
Lunch
lunch
breaks.
breaks.
Wow. This
Been
feels heavy.
there. Been there. Been that.
Sometimes still there.
There's different perspectives for this.
Yeah.
What do you think, Pao? I want you to share first. Like,
Okay. Well, what I think here is that it's important for us to recognize and perhaps understand what it is that's making work from home so tiring. So if I were to share from my own experience, I can relate to this. Getting tired of work from home, weekends feel like lunch breaks. For me, maybe it's getting frustrated with work from home. And that's coming from the experience that it's much more difficult than I expected to manage my own time, to put my work priorities first because, and I like how one of our friends, Lippy, put it maybe over a month ago. Menen said that since we're trying to get everything done in this space that once was all about the life side of the equation, suddenly the square meters are feeling smaller and smaller because there's
mm,
more that's being crammed into it. So for me, what's being crammed into it, so just to share with the rest of you, Lippy and the rest of the team heard this just before we went live. My son was banging on the door right there behind me. And that for me is a big part of the frustration and the difficulty of working from home. And the tension for me is not just the banging, it's not the noise, not just the distraction, that's all there. But the tension is really that my son is actually one of my highest priorities. So if it was really about choosing, then I would likely prioritize him if it was a choice. But then I also know that there are other priorities that need to get done. So why was that important? For me, it's important for us to recognize and understand where that frustration is coming from because then we can ask the question, what can I do about it? What can I do about addressing this frustration? And for me, as funny as this sounds, it meant trying something out like working from the car once in a while. Telling my wife, telling my son, telling the people in the household,
that's a good tip.
I'm going outside for 2, 3 hours. I'm gonna sit in the car in a parking lot, as funny as it sounds. And especially nowadays that it's pretty cool, it's not very painful. This is actually a blessing when we have air-conditioned temperatures pretty much throughout the day. Then I can work in the car and it helps me get my work done. And I think from the other side, to take the perspective of my son, it removes the frustration of knowing that his father, or dada as he calls me, is here,
Mm.
but is locking himself in a room for a reason that if I were my son, I don't really get. Why are you hiding from me? So that's my
That's a
take on it,
tough
Lippy.
question to answer. But and Pao, I appreciate how you put it together. So for everyone's appreciation, Pao was really putting it like a framework where it would be a step by step. And if you could understand where that frustration, where that feeling is coming from, you'd be able to address it, right? I'll I'll address it from the other end, from
Sure.
the other end of this candle. I'm not even sure if I'm getting my metaphors correctly. Basta, yun. Kabila, the other end. I would ask this person, when was the last time you took care of yourself? And I really meant took care of yourself.
Right, right.
Right? This sounds to me possibly like burnout.
That's true.
And the person is, I also have another friend of mine, another co-fasi, one of the coaches that I work with, share with me that it's all work from home. And even though it's all work from home right now, when was the last time that you genuinely felt home from work?
Ah, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right? When was the last time that you genuinely felt home from work?
Yeah.
So speaking to this person. I'm really thinking about what can you give yourself a time and space to non-judgmentally take care of yourself.
Yeah.
Indulge in something that you find enjoyable and work your way from that. Right?
True.
Even the little things. So sometimes people, when I coach people, they look for, oh, it's a big thing. I want to. What would you find really enjoyable? I want to travel. Kamusta naman? That's not something that's really gonna work now, right? But even I had a coachee, something as small as when I do something, I reward myself by eating a choc nut, like a little peanut bar.
Chocolate.
Something as small as that, right? And work your way from that.
Right.
And to Menen's point, if everything's so constricted, everything's happening in the same space, I'm feeling the push here might be to begin to separate it.
Yeah.
Because if a weekend feels like a lunch break, then you're telling me the whole week
It's just
feels
blocked.
like just the morning and the afternoon, right? So you're not
Yeah.
creating enough separation. Maybe it's an
Mhm.
assumption of mine between your personal and your professional time.
Right. And I think, Lippy, if you'll allow me just to jump off from that idea, then I think it's a matter also of being clear about what are the real priorities that we can face in the present, that we can actually prioritize in the present. So, for example, Lippy mentioned travel. And I do know that some people have started to travel. I've seen some of my friends going off to Boracay. The nearer
Oh,
ones, yes, I've seen some.
oh,
I've seen some of my friends posting how they've been to perhaps nearby Tagaytay before we had the Taal acting up again, for example. So if that for you is something that is real and that to you is a high priority,
and that's
then maybe
something
that's
that's
there.
possible, right? So we're
Yes,
not saying
possible.
that it's bad to travel or what. Don't get us wrong, guys. Right? If it's possible and it's within your means and whatnot, then good. But we're also talking about the other people who are desiring to do something that's not as easily done right now.
Right. Or
There are some
perhaps,
people that, or it's meeting friends or meeting people,
yeah,
right?
right.
That's
And,
one
and
way that
perhaps,
you can be able to relax.
just to jump off on that meeting friends and people, I think again we can set priorities, we can set maybe boundaries. So for me, for example, because of our household and how we all live in a small space, and it really wouldn't be realistic for anyone to isolate if something, if it goes south somehow,
Yeah.
then I think for us, the meeting friends, hanging out in a bar like we used to do, maybe not so real. I miss it, yes, but in the present, maybe it's not something that is realistic yet, considering everything else. Now, on the other hand, for someone who's single and maybe feels like, I'm going mad because I'm alone the whole day, then okay, maybe if it's in within your priorities, within your boundaries, then yes, consider it. Of course, do it within health and safety guidelines,
Yeah,
of
yeah.
course. So I think there, I'd say also set boundaries and decide where does one thing end and where does the rest fit in. For example, many people that I know getting stressed out, you brought up the term and the reality of being burnt out. I think part of it is also because when we work from home, because of the lack of traffic, because even of the lack of the need to walk from one office to another. So for those of us who used to work in perhaps
Yeah.
who work in big organizations, we probably didn't realize it, but part of the space was really literally physical space. From one meeting to another takes 5 minutes to walk from one conference room to the next, or to walk from your supervisor's room to the conference room. And so while yes, we're a bit stressed out there, imagine what it feels like if all you have to do is click on the next Zoom link or the next MS Teams link. And literally you can do that in seconds. And therefore I think it actually stresses us out even more. And I think the challenge there is to perhaps put checks on ourselves and say we don't need to do it just because we can. Just because we can take on 20 meetings in a day, because there's no traffic, because there's no walking from one office to the next.
No, God
Perhaps
no.
we don't need to take on those 20 meetings.
For those who have done it, and that in the start of this pandemic, I tried to do it, thinking it would
Yeah,
be easier, only to be taught the hard lesson that hey, wait a minute,
right.
it's harder. And to follow also on what you were saying, Pao, it's all before it used to be we would commute going to the office and we would take a trip, commute going back home, whatever your commute was,
Right.
right? Whatever your commute was, or whatever varying level of difficulty or length of time, that was a transition period. So that's
Yes.
one tip I want to share with you, right? As you think about it, be mindful about setting transition periods, right? Have a small ritual or what would work for you to help you start your day and to help you end your day. And even going
Yeah.
into the weekend. So one thing I do is when I'm finished with my work for the day, I take a mindful pause, take a few deep breaths, and tell myself that all right, the laptop is going to get closed. We are ending the work, and I can go back to my family and go back to being home from work, etc., etc. A coachee of mine takes a sip of water, okay, and then tells themselves that all right, it's going to be the weekend, etc. So being more mindful. So you're creating again that separation between work and home. Okay, so
Right.
that's my intention for you, right? And thank you for putting in this question.
I love that idea,
Don't be
Lippy.
too hard on yourself. I think that's also what I'm trying to get at here.
That's true.
Don't be too
That's true.
hard on yourself, right? And take the time to take care of yourself. I know that what I've experienced, Pao, is that we went into lockdown, we went into this whole shifting from physical to online space, but the expectations have not gone lower, any lower
No,
from
true.
ever since we were doing physical work setup. But that was one thing I had to learn. I had to learn not to beat myself up for not as quickly adapting, not as quickly delivering, for having to take time for myself to shift, right? To be able to transition from what I used to do into what I'm doing now. And that's
Right.
something that's my intention for this person. Learn how to see what works for you, to shift, and to create more time for yourself.
Right.
When I say
And I
more
think
time for yourself, more, really home from work. Because sometimes people think more time for myself is Netflix.
yeah.
But I'm not saying that's bad. But while I'm watching Netflix, I'm thinking about and worrying about all the next stuff that I need to do. Right?
Yeah.
Then,
And
and
I think Lippy, maybe I'm just flipping things around here, but something you when you say home from work, it also reminded me of how another one of our friends actually told me once that this working from home has started to feel like we're living at work. And I think that is when we begin to feel that, that's a danger sign. That's a red flag. Because basically what we've done is we brought the office home
into
and we said, this is the office.
into your little
And
corner,
basically we
right?
sacrificed the home. Yeah.
Yes.
And I'm just going back. I like that idea of transitions. And if for example, you mentioned the trips, the commute, even a morning routine can be a transition because that can be the point in time when you say, okay, I'm waking up. And maybe you can even plan for the transitions. Just recently, I was listening to I was watching a YouTube video from, I think it was Mel Robbins, who suggested something like when you wake up in the morning, set your intention. Ask yourself, what am I going to do today? What's my disposition going to be today? What are the choices I'm going to make? Am I going to be grumpy? Am I going to be aggressive? Am I going to be laid back and
I love it.
chill?
It's a choice. It's a choice to be grumpy.
Exactly. And I think there we can make the choices and say, today I'm going to do blank. I'm going to finish project 1, 2, 3, perhaps. And at the same time, as you put it, I'm going to take care of myself. And I think when we make that decision, it gives us a bit more direction. It reminds us it's not just about the Zoom meetings. It's not just about the work. It's not just about the webcam and the laptop in front of
Yeah,
us.
yeah. Nice. So we have some comments here. So Mark, super relate on the father-son dynamics during, we miss you. Hope you guys are staying safe there in Mindanao. Be
Since
more
you
home from work. That's a good check. Or
yep,
maybe they're here. So this is how long we have not caught up with these people. Raymond, yes, one of our other co-facilitators. To travel somewhere as long as it's worth swabbing for, yes, of course. But if you
agree.
must just observe health protocols and not unduly expose or spread the virus. Thanks, Raymond, for that.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Right. Oh,
Let's
we have
check
a
in with
comment.
anyone else. Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. So since my setup is work from home, there's a time where I'm drained with all the activities and responsibilities, homework, online classes. I want to be organized, but sometimes there's really just not enough time, and by the end of the day, I'm super tired.
I feel you there. I feel you there. And
And we only have
if I may jump in here,
and we only have reality. We only have 24 hours. All of us have the same 24 hours in a day. It doesn't feel so good to hear that being on the
yes,
receiving
but
end, but it's a fact. So
it's a great equalizer.
yeah. So what am I talking about this? So before I pass this to you, Pao, what I
Go
would
go.
look at if I'm coaching this person is I would look at your energy. It's not
Ah,
time that I think
yes,
is a concern here. It's how am I managing my energy?
absolutely, absolutely. And since you touched on that, I don't want this to explode into an hour long conversation on just this. But since you touch on energy, it might be worth looking into other factors. Like in one of our solutions, the 5 choices, we talk about the fifth choice, which is managing and maintaining our fuel and our energy. And here we talk about not just time management, but we actually talk about things like sleep, getting rest, relaxation, even getting some movement and exercise. And one of the things I was going to share earlier, Lippy, when you said take care of yourself, something that my wife and I have started doing semi-regularly, a few days in the week. We actually go out, have a few minutes to run. When I say a few minutes, maybe 30, 45 minutes. And what I've found personally is that really helps because it allows us to breathe. It allows me to unload the stresses of the day, whether it's work and even the kids. That, let's be honest, I love our kids to death, but they can be stressful at times when they're crying, when you don't understand what they want, when they're banging on the door. And sometimes getting away for a moment is exactly the solution to that. Because then it allows you to reset, to breathe. And when you exercise, when you get out and do a jog, it's up to you. You may bike, jog, you can even just walk around, sit outside perhaps in a safe place. That can make all the difference. And it can bring back your energy, as Lippy pointed us. So I think that's a great point, Lippy. The energy.
And and if the action is to be organized, um I'm and going back to habit two, where you think about what is your end in mind. It's you so you can go about it two ways. Either you bit by bit you can fix it, or it's not the only two ways. Let me correct myself. Let me put it this way: the
Mhm.
two ways that come to mind, right, is one, you can bit by bit shift your schedule, shift things so that you're more organized. I've seen some
Right?
other coaches force the issue, like set aside an hour to get organized for the next week.
Absolutely.
um I'm sensing there's an emotional component to this statement as well. So sa akin, again, go back to when was the last time you took care of yourself in a non-judgmental and accepting way? Because sometimes it's the taking care of myself, and if I'm imagining myself in this situation, is I'm going to sleep, I'm going to binge, I'm going to eat a lot because I'm so tired, etc., etc. But it's not like recharging myself. It's more of because I'm just so drained. I just want to feel like a human being again,
Yeah.
and I just wanna, and then wake up the next morning heavy to repeat the whole cycle. So I wasn't really more organized, right, in that
Right. And I
in
think,
that.
Libby, your comment reminded me of something I read recently, how there is this concept of the revenge sleeping late, revenge
Yeah, yeah,
doing.
yeah, yeah. I
And
haven't
the
read the
idea
full
is
list about it, but what is it, Pao? What is it?
because we've been so again, working from home has taken up so much time. Then some people, and sometimes I've done this myself. And when I was reading that article, I said, so is that what I'm doing? Because then it says something like, for those of you who lie in bed and instead of resting, go through YouTube, go through Netflix, and say, I'm entitled to this because I've been so stressed out. Then it becomes a revenge. But then it
It's a
begs the
sense of
question,
control.
on whom are you taking the revenge, right?
Yeah, that's right. I been there, been there. I mean, my hair used to be up to here until 2 weeks ago, and I used to tell myself that I just dry out my hair. But of course, I caught myself with my hair already dry, but still, let's still watch another episode. Of
Right.
course, and
And,
and
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 I think,
that's again, that goes back to a sense of control, and
yes,
this is
yes,
and this is why it's helpful to really have a support group. If there's someone you can talk to, if there's someone you can open up, especially in this given this lockdown situation, that would be really helpful to you. And it's not as if you're carrying the burden all
yeah,
alone. And that's something that I want to tell everyone who's with us and who will be watching us. Take some time. Part of taking care of yourself might be to ask for help from someone, to have
absolutely.
someone just listen to me, and I just want to tell you about how I feel.
Yeah.
Don't underestimate the value of that.
And I think, Lippy, just jumping off from that, again, going back to the asking for a friend earlier on, since my setup is work from home, there's a time when I'm drained with all the activities and responsibilities. I think one of the challenges here is that just because everything apparently fits into this box that we call home doesn't mean we have to do everything. And one step further doesn't mean we have to do everything ourselves. I think the challenge is asking ourselves, what are the one, two, three, maybe at most five most important things that I really want to get done? And to go back to something we discussed earlier, that really are possible for me to get done. And then maybe the rest become optional. They become nice to do's, or perhaps I can do tomorrow's.
Yeah.
So then at least it relieves us and leaves some space for us to re-energize, to get some rest, to take care of ourselves. Because I feel this, the work from home, the activities, the online classes. It's very tempting to say, yes, I'm going to do it all. And then you realize you're not eating lunch. You're sleeping at you're sleeping past midnight, and that really is not a sustainable setup. Eventually, it's gonna break down.
Yeah, Amanda's here sharing mental health is very important. Something that we're forgetting or deprioritizing nowadays since we're so concerned putting out fires, focusing on physical health due to pandemic, and also focusing on productivity because by now the expectation with companies and in the workplaces it's been a year of work from home. Surely
Been long
you
enough.
must, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, surely sanay ka na, kaya mo na to, etc. Naka-adjust ka na. But of course, that the truth is it's still something you've gotta watch out for, and so this is more of like my request to everyone watching us. Don't forget about yourself and
absolutely.
even even how you're thinking and what's coming up with your heart and mind and your emotions.
And I think
Yeah.
that the mental health comment relates to something that Pauline raised here. Work from home kind of takes away from the feel of home being a safe haven, and I can understand that. And maybe one of the ways here, it's not going to be perfect, is to decide what are the signals, what are the instruments or the things that we can do to preserve that safety, or at least to allow us to go back to it within specific times. So, for example, if the stress is coming from a laptop being open and having the constant question of, do I have a new email? What am I going to do about this project? Then maybe one of the things we can do is actually decide at a certain time, I'm going to close my laptop, pack it away for the day, and say, this desk is no longer my work desk from now until the end of the day. So we have different strokes and we have different realities, as you put it earlier, Lippy. Some of us have an
And
actual
to expand that,
yes,
right? Not also in terms of time, but also can be, also in terms of space. So if that corner is a work corner, is there another corner in the house or somewhere where you can designate as your
right.
like little creative corner? Or it doesn't even have to be. It could be something as simple as, and this is something for me, right? If I'm facing my table right now, this is work. If I
Mhm.
have my chair turned 180 degrees and my background is folded up, that's play. That's
Right,
fun.
right,
That for me, that's
right.
like being creative because I can put out my guitar, play with my son in the back area of this place.
So that's what you have
And
hidden
that
there.
no, what I have hidden here is my son's little mini ball pit place thingy that his grandma bought. Let's bring it on the show next time. I think it'll be cute to do it from the ball pit. What am I saying?
Sure,
But yeah,
sure,
it's
sure. But I think you bring up a
what
very
would
good
what would
point.
really be helpful in making it.
And I think Lippy, just to again add to something that you mentioned, you said something about even just turning around, right? Or changing your location. And I think one of the challenges that maybe many of us face is that we're still tied to the old. As much as we're saying that companies should be realistic and not expect everyone to go back to the normal or to work like we used to pre-pandemic, maybe one of the things we're missing is that we're expecting our lives, our home lives, to be as they were pre-pandemic. And
Yeah,
maybe that's where some of the stress is
that's a
coming
good
from.
point. Yeah.
Because things have changed. So maybe there's a way that we can come into the present and still maintain that safety, that safe haven of a home by maybe readjusting our expectations or maybe redefining what a safe space is and not
Mhm.
expecting it to be the old safe space.
Agree. Totally. And so again, the work begins with us.
Yes,
It's
it's
not
here.
like
It's internal.
it's not like the safe space just gonna magically happen. We've got to go out and claim it. You've got to
Yes.
go out and claim it. And here, let Andrew Sauce put in a really nice comment.
Right.
Sooner or later, a man or a person, if he is wise, discovers that life is a mixture of good days and bad, victory and defeat, give and take.
That's true. And I think one of the things that maybe will help here is if part of the stress of working from home is coming from expectations of the company or maybe the teams and the bosses we work with, maybe it's a matter of raising our hands and saying, excuse me, I'm sorry, I'm still drowning here. I haven't quite adjusted. I need a bit more space. Maybe I need some flexibility. And yes, it is scary because perhaps the fear is our boss is coming back to us and saying, "Oh, you can't hack it? Okay, then I'm sorry." But I think the reality is, if we raise our hands there probably will be, number one, more respect and more understanding there. So
Yeah,
get over
yeah.
that hump of the fear and say, this is what I'm experiencing. I need help here. Is it about time? Is it expectations? Is it space? It can be many different things, I think.
It's being proactive, and not taking a
Absolutely.
passive role in your self-care.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
self-care doesn't happen to me. And that was something I had to learn the hard way. It used to you think it happens to you, but no, it's not it's
Yes.
not
It's
happening.
something we do for ourselves,
Something we
right?
have to do. It's something we have to claim for ourselves, right? It's
Yes,
not like
absolutely.
and it's not, and it's not as simple as plopping down on a bed or a sofa and that's self-care. I could be lying down but thinking about, oh my god, there's so much I didn't do today. Oh, what about this? Is still gonna be an issue tomorrow. Or what about,
Right.
even so this is the mental health aspect that we're talking about, not just physically, but in terms of our thoughts and feelings. How are we also shifting and transitioning from a work mode into a home and rest mode?
Right. Right. And
Yeah.
to your point, yes, it can be very internal. And I think that's the challenge now, to make it an internal space, an internal decision, rather than waiting for the environment and everything else to signal for us that yes, now is time for play, now is time for relaxation. And is it going to be easy? No, absolutely not. I think from my experience, it's just not going to be easy. But there are things that we can do. We can take small steps. And I think that's what Lippy and I have been trying to
Yeah.
point out here.
So you for those who are in this, you're not alone. We're still, we're still in this
I feel
together.
you.
We're sharing what we found out works for us and what we've experienced, but we're not. Whatever works for you works for you. So I encourage personal experimentation, guys. If you get what I mean,
Right.
try small things and see what works for you, what works for your family, what works for you if to get the organization that you want, and eventually make weekends feel more like weekends again.
Right. And make even the weekdays feel more reasonable and feel productive and more energetic.
Oh, here's a good comment. So we have it
From Sydney
from
Cordero.
another friend of ours, Sydney. Sydney, we should
Hello,
have you
Sid.
on, we should have you on this show.
Should have
Sometimes
you on board
we
here.
think too much about creating the safe space by ourselves. But we share the same space with people who have
Absolutely.
different perspective standards and expectations of a safe space. So co-create the safe environment with those who that is gold. See what Sidney's
Yes.
saying is right. So again, ask for help from
Fantastic.
people. That's right. It's not just you alone. I do understand the need for alone time. If it's something you need to do alone, that also
Mhm.
has to be clear to other people. That so other people know you're being
Yes.
alone. You're having your sacred alone time, and you're not shunning them away for no reason,
Right.
right? And involve other people as well. I mean, it's an opportunity. It can be both a challenge and opportunity
Yes.
depending on the current relationship setups or drama or lack of drama you have in your house. I don't know, but but again, that's the challenge and the invitation is to really co-create that space with those who
And
are we are with.
I think part of the gold here in what Sydney mentioned is that the last thing we want is for our home and the previous safe space and safety net to become part of our stress, which can very well be the case when we insist on doing everything ourselves, following only our standards, because then instead of just having to think about the work and the expectations that we have outside, then we also have these tensions at home where we're clashing heads, bumping into the people whom we should be co-creating the safe space with. So, Sydney, absolutely great comment there. Thank
Sabi
you.
nga ng sabi nga ng isang fellow coach that nung nagsimula daw siya mag-work from home, mas na-miss pa daw siya ng mga anak niya.
Kasi nandun ka nakikita ka,
Exactly.
no
Right?
touch
He has a sign. He has like a little sign outside his door that says like on air,
DNB.
like the studio on air, something like that. Aris, if you're listening, good job.
So I think this has been a very hot topic, I think. And I think for good reason. Because many of us, if not all of us, have been through work from home. Quite a number of us are still working from home. I think anywhere from 50 to 70% of people are still, at least majority.
It's a majority. It's still, and with our current situation, with where our locally where our country is right now. It doesn't seem to be anytime soon that
Yeah.
we will ease restrictions and be meeting easily face to face.
And I think for good reason at this point still. That again, that's my personal belief.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I'll be honest. I absolutely miss face-to-face facilitation, face-to-face coaching. But if it comes at the risk of super spreading, then it's
Yeah,
okay.
we don't want that.
Yeah.
So that's a choice, and me, I want to acknowledge people. Thank you for choosing to keep yourselves, your families, and each other safe. That's really a bit. That's also again another proactive choice that we're all taking here
Right.
to be able to to maintain and keep everyone healthy.
Absolutely. We have another comment in here from Cabs Bert. I hope I'm
But
mentioning your name or I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Bosses or corporate decision makers need to empathize with the issues arising from work from home setups of their teams and introduce counseling or coaching and discussion sessions like this. What do you think of that, Libby?
yeah, I think Cubs, you can email us, loop in your boss, and we'll respond appropriately. We'll respond. Team, put in our contact email, how we can. No, kidding aside, Cubs, this is a best practice of some of the companies that I have
Yeah.
experienced and some I've had the pleasure of working with during this pandemic period. They set up helplines. They set up a support system for their peers, for their people. They engage professionals who are able to provide the service, and that really depends on the set of the company. But really, having discussions, having speaking to either a professional or a professional teaching you and managers how to handle the situation, any which way that you can address this, equip people to address this or whatnot. Very, very helpful given this situation. And I think the magic word that Cabs is sharing with us here is empathize.
Yes.
It's really huge, and because I've seen some, and I'm not putting them down. It's a reality, and it's also a perspective. I know of some companies and have gotten to work with one where top management doesn't believe in a work from home setup. I don't know, maybe because of the way that their industry is, the demand, etc., etc.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And even if they want people, so if everyone's on a shifting schedule, skeletal force, make sure that distancing,
Yeah.
they still make sure that people observe health protocols. They make sure that people have safe, reliable transportation to and fro. So it's a bigger demand from business owners and leaders, and at the same time, it's also so important because at the end of the day, it also supports the people who are doing the work.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying it's easy. And, cabs, depending on the willingness of the bosses or corporate decision makers and the people, I'm not saying it's just them, to co-create the agreement, the working arrangement and what people will need, right? That takes courage and proactivity.
And I think you mentioned courage. I think, Lippy, part of it also is to use a word that is perhaps becoming more and more cliche because of Brene Brown. It also takes a sense of vulnerability in the sense that, what I've seen very often, and I've been guilty of this myself, especially in my younger years, is when bosses and when decision makers ask, is it clear? Are there any concerns? Does anyone have anything else they want to say? And the whole room, whether it's a literal physical room or a Zoom room, just keeps quiet, or everyone says, tama naman, oo. And then, when you have, this is one of my favorites, your separate Viber groups where it's everyone except the boss. And then they begin talking about, grabe naman to. Then,
No, it's
there's also the need.
right? Yeah.
Yes. Then let's have that meeting in the meeting. Let's have a brave soul, or at least a few brave souls, raise their hands and say, the reality is I do have a concern. I'm having a difficult time with something, or I need blank. I need someone to talk to. And sometimes it's worth doing it in the public venue, and sometimes maybe it's more appropriate to do it directly. Email, or as they say nowadays, PM is the key.
PM is the key.
Again, I say that jokingly, but it's worth raising our hands once in a while. And one of the things I watched another video recently, and the speaker, I forget her name, and Jen Cohen, I think, she was saying something like, the secret to getting what we want one of the first things we need to do is to ask. Say, this is what I want, or this is what I need. Because if we don't ask, or if we don't mention it, then it's difficult for others to read our minds. And it wouldn't be fair for us to assume that we didn't get it because people didn't care. So this is not to say that everything we ask for will be given. But
Yeah, yeah.
if we don't ask, then how does anyone know what we need?
And on the other end of the spectrum, right, if I'm speaking to you guys, if you're the boss, if you're the team leader, there's also about setting up an environment that allows people to speak up,
True, yes.
right? And so, right, Pa, we teach a course that's about managing, leading the next generation. The title is Managing Millennials. But as we all know, if you're in the know, if you don't know, the millennials are now getting older. There's another newer generation,
Right.
younger generation coming up. So I lovingly call it Managing the Next Generation, right? But the official
True.
title of the course is Managing Millennials. Anyway, the point here being is that if we want highly engaged, highly productive teams, one of the behaviors the manager or the leader has to do is to make sure we have a safe environment, right? So that people are able to safely voice their opinion and not let it be taken against them.
Agree,
And I
agree.
think that's so important, especially, and sometimes, tip, you can even go in a meeting and preface it. We can go a meeting when the official agenda is over. I have a coachee who says, "All right, guys, now let's take away all that and, 'di ba, kamustahan tayo, let's talk a little bit about ourselves muna." Or they start the meeting with that. Wag
Right.
muna trabaho, tayo muna. And they set aside time, I'm investing 30 minutes here just for us to get to know each other and, check up on each other, and then let's go to the work. It really
Yeah.
depends on you and your team. If you're the leader, surely you have some influence about that. Try to see how you can help kickstart discussions like what Cabs was saying. Discussions like this.
And maybe part of it is, again, going back to raising the hand. I think many of us are familiar with the proverbial coffee with Lippy. Let's say I'm the boss and I send out an email for Wednesday next week, coffee chat with Lippy. And previously, perhaps for those of us who are not bosses, we dreaded that because then we begin thinking, oh my, what's this coffee all about?
Oo,
Maybe we
di
can
ba?
turn the tables around.
And then the cafe, yung Starbucks becomes the whipping place. Naku, nag-Starbucks kami. And isn't like, or nag-coffee bean kami, isn't like we went out and had a nice touch. It was because my boss had to tell me something na hindi niya kaya sabihin sa office. Something like that.
Right. And, part of it is maybe we can send out that invitation and say, boss, virtual coffee naman tayo. Simpleng usapan lang.
Pwede.
Doesn't have to be anything, we don't have to bring in anything absolutely heavy. We can start small. Small wins, as they say. And, one of the things we talk about in another one of our solutions, the 6 critical practices, is leaders or bosses having one-on-ones with their
Yeah, that's very
people.
important.
And I think that's important for a number of reasons. It allows for connection. And at the same time, it allows for that venue for us as supervisors and bosses to understand the people that we work with. And at the same time, it gives them the opportunity to speak up. Of course, there is that prerequisite that you mentioned, Lippy, which is it needs to be a safe space. It cannot be a space where we will, as supervisors, as leaders, throw things at them and say, oh, this is what you said. And if you'd like to learn more about this, you may actually want to join us. There will be a session on one-on-ones and how leaders and bosses can establish connection with their employees, their direct reports, especially in this context, on March 4. And that will be facilitated by Eric Picard. We're entitling it Different Folks, Different Strokes, and it's a simple path to engagement. So I digressed a little bit there, but the reason I felt it to be worth mentioning is that I think it touches on this, and it's one of the keys for us making work from home a productive and a positive experience rather than one that eats away at our energy and our life, so to speak.
Nice. Well said. Thank you. So join if you would like to know more, we'll paste the link in the comment box.
Yeah.
Eric, we know him personally, very cool guy. He'll be able to share a lot of stories about what works with dealing with different types of people. He's very experienced in that regard.
I agree.
All right. This was a really juicy topic, right? Any
But
other
very.
I'm
So-
looking at the team just to send us if there are any questions and any
Yeah.
other comments that we have for our ongoing conversation here.
In the meantime, I think it would be good for us to also acknowledge everyone who's on board with us here. So we have Laroa, of course. Let me know if I'm pronouncing your names correctly. Laroa S, Cabs Bert, who already shared a few thoughts earlier. City, thank you for joining us again. Connie Diaz, Luis Mark Plaza, Michelle Gan, Raymond Siriaco, Amanda, Pauline Cruz, and quite a few have actually shared their thoughts. Andrew So, of course, and then Sid earlier,
Thank you.
who
Yeah.
mentioned that idea of co-creating the safe environment. So thank you to all of you for joining us here, and thank you for jumping in with your own thoughts. You see how it enriches the conversation all the more, and I honestly get excited when new ideas come in, and it's not just about what Lippy and I think here in isolation. Another one from Kabsbert. In Sweden, they have a word for that. It's fika. I hope I'm saying that right. Something part of the culture to link and bridge over a cup of coffee. Absolutely. And I'm a coffee lover. And I think that coffee is not just about the bitterness and the aroma. I think coffee is about the stories that go along with that cup. So I think it's the perfect place, and I think a perfect, I don't know what it is. It's a perfect situation or something to bring people together.
Bringing people together.
Yep. Especially in work from home, when we are separated by the
Yeah.
context.
Correct.